I'm going to explain how to make a knotted necklace using griffin bead cord. It comes on a card like this, and you start off by unwrapping the entire cord off of the card. You need to have a cord that is approximately the same thickness as the holes in your bead, so that when you make knots, the beads will not slide over them. Once you unwrap your cord, you need to stretch it as much as possible, because it will stretch at some point, and you want it to stretch sooner rather than after you've made your necklace, and it'll mess up the design. Okay. To begin, we're going to make an overhand knot at the end of the cord, away from the needle, like this. I've already used this cord, so I have a couple of knots, but I'm going to work it as if I were starting from scratch. Okay. I'm going to cut this part off because I don't need it. This is what it would be like if it was a new cord and you were starting from scratch. I always save the card because it has the number of the cord on it, and I will want to rewrap it if I have any left later. The first thing I'm going to do after I make the knot is put on one tiny little seed bead. This seed bead will end up inside of these clamshell bead tips that we're going to use in a minute. I bring the seed bead all the way down to the knot. The reason why we use the seed bead is because the knot itself might be too small and it might slide through the hole in the bottom of the clamshell. So the seed bead will serve the purpose of preventing the knot from sliding through the hole in the bottom of the clamshell. The next thing I'm going to do is take GS Hypo Cement and cover the knot and the seed bead with glue. GS Hypo Cement is a kind of glue that's good for using on porous materials like cord. We always want to put the little sharp point back in. It's very difficult to do. I'll do this after I'm done. The next step is to get the clamshell bead tip, which is this. It's a little finding that has kind of like two cups on the side with a hole in the middle and a loop at the top that's used for attaching the clasp later. We're going to put the needle in from the inside of the clamshell toward the outside. The advantage of griffin cord is that it comes with this wire needle attached to it, so you don't have to thread a needle to work with it. The hole at the bottom of the clamshell is pretty small, so it's tricky to find it. I got it. And now I'm going to pull the clamshell carefully. I don't want to fray the cord. Well, the hole in this clamshell is quite small. I'm going to pull it all the way down to the bottom of the cord, or I should say the end of the cord, away from the needle, where I have my knot and my seed bead, both of which will go inside the clamshell. Now I'm going to take chain nose pliers and close the clamshell around the knot and the seed bead. So it doesn't matter what color seed bead you use because it's not going to show. I'm going to use my wire cutters now to cut off this extra bit of cord that sticks out of the clamshell. To attach the clasp, we use this little hook thing and take the loop on the bottom of the clasp, put it onto the hook, and then we're going to treat that hook the way we treat wire when we're making loops. I'm going to take round nose pliers, grasp the very end of the hook, and rotate my wrist into a loop, or I should say rotate my wrist to make the hook into a loop. Make sure it's even. Okay, that will keep the clasp on the clamshell. Now we're ready to go to work with our knotting. We take in our right hand whatever part of the necklace that's already completed. In this case, it's just the clasp. And with 2 fingers of the left hand, we go over the fingers, come down and around across, put our thumb on the cross to keep it from sliding open, turn our fingers, Yellow Pages style, like this, and take the part of the necklace that's completed and drop it through the space between the fingers. Now we take the very pointy, special knotting tweezers and put them inside the knot, or the loop that we made. And then we're going to grasp the we're going to grasp the cord with the very tip of the tweezers, right at the point where we want the knot to end up. And then we let go, whoops, and okay, here's a good example. If you make a mistake like this, don't try to fix it. Open it up and start completely again, because it's very easy to make a mistake if you try to fix a partially finished knot. So again, I'm taking it like this, I'm going over my fingers, pulling it around, cross, Yellow Pages, drop it through, put the tweezers inside the knot and down to the exact spot where we want a knot to end up. Grasp it with the very tip of the tweezers and then pull the knot closed around the tweezers. Close the knot completely as you pull out the tweezers so that the knot will end up exactly in the spot that you want it to be, right there. All right, now I'm going to put on my first bead. Normally, it would be ideal to start with a small round bead next to the clasp, so it makes it easy to put your fingers on the clasp. But since I don't happen to have any small round beads handy, I'm going to look for a small one of these beads. These are a little bit of shell beads, which I picked because they have holes that are quite small, and I'm using a pretty small cord. I'm going to string on one bead and pull it all the way down to the last knot, and then I'm going to repeat what I did before to make another knot. Everything that's completed about the necklace I put in my right hand, bring it up and around, across, Yellow Pages fingers, drop it through the space between your fingers, use your tweezers, grasp the cord where you want the knot to end up, push the bead all the way back so that there'll be no space between the knot and the bead, and then pull the knot closed around the tweezers and push it very tight with your nail if possible. We want to make sure the knot is tight now because it's going to tighten up eventually, and if you don't tighten it now, you'll end up with a space. Okay, I'm going to continue with more beads, and in a minute I'm going to show you how to make spaces between your beads to create a floating design with your beads. I can't find the hole in that one, so I'll get another one. I always want to start with small beads close to the clasp, because otherwise it would be awkward getting your fingers past the beads onto the clasp. And I'm going to do a knot, just as I did before. If you decide to use your tweezers to tighten the knot, which is not highly recommended, be super careful not to rub the edge of the tweezers against the cord, because it's very sharp and it'll fray the cord and eventually break it. Okay, you don't have to put just one bead. You can put a few beads together before you do the next knot. So I'm going to put a few. It'll give me a little bit of a layered look. I'm trying to start with a small bead and work my way up to a bigger bead, a little bit bigger, and then I'll work my way back down to smaller beads. I think of that as a mountain effect. It goes up and then it goes back down the other side. Get for the very end of the other side of the mountain a small bead. Something sharp here. Okay. See, I have my little cluster of beads. Here are my knots, and here's my bead cluster. So actually, all these beads are together between one pair of knots. Okay. In a way, you can barely see that it's a cluster, but anyway. Now I'm going to show you how to make a space to create a floating design. The first thing we want to do is decide how big the space should be, and I usually use about an inch of space, which would be approximately that much. Let's see how close I am. All right, well, maybe I like 3/4 of an inch. That's more like what I have here. A little bit more than 3/4. Okay. I'm going to, before I put another bead on, I'm going to start another knot. And now I'm going to place the last knot that I made on one of the lines that I created. And then I'm going to put my tweezers into the knot on the spot where my next line is, and then pull the cord tight around the tweezers, just like I did before. Now I have a space, and I'm going to put a bead. I feel like doing just one bead this time. See, I have that space, and now I'm going to make another knot to hold the other side of the bead. It's very tricky at first to get the knots placed exactly where you want them, but after practice, it becomes pretty easy. I'm going to do another space. And I'm going to continue just that way. Let's see, how does that look? It's kind of interesting, I guess, sort of. I think what I'll do is just keep going.
That's a good example of the different styles that you can use.
Are you still recording?
Mm-hmm.
A different style. You mean,
I don't mean styles,
nodding or not nodding, kind of?
Spaces and not doing spaces and doing
Oh,
clusters
yeah.
and doing single ones.
Right. Yeah, I like to include all the different possibilities. If you wanted to, you could vary the spaces, but I usually don't. I've never done knotting with these kind of strange shaped beads before. It barely qualifies to call this a bead, but it serves the purpose. Are you learning?
Yeah,
Angela?
absolutely.
You got a free class, except you're not doing it. Is that funny looking?
No.
Maybe I'll do a cluster. I like doing these spaces more than just doing knots in between. Ow. There's something about this needle that it's grabbing my skin. Ah, help. I'm like, my skin is stuck in the needle.
Oh.
I don't know if I'm going to post this part of it.
It happens.
Hazards of, this has never, okay. Never happened to me before. Ooh, it's scary. It's going to happen again.
Maybe you had some glue on your finger still.
No, I think, I don't know, like one of the wires is cut or something and my finger's getting caught on it. It's kind of funny looking,
I
but
like it. It's organic like the ocean.
yeah. The necklace that came from the bottom of the sea. Oops, I don't know what was that. If I knew how to edit videos, it would be helpful, because then I could edit out the boring parts.
That's when people fast forward.
Yeah, I guess so. Oh, now that thing is catching on the beads. Yeah, I see what it is. This is like a double wire, and one of the wires is cut, so it's sticking out. Oops. I'm gonna break my own rule. I hope I didn't. Yep, there you go. It shows you why you should never do that. Because the knot did not come out where it should have. Now this is loose and there's a space. Oh well. My husband always says, perfection is the enemy of the good. So, I like that idea. Trying not to be perfect. As you probably just noticed, once I get going, I do the knots in a slightly more relaxed way. But that's because I'm so used to them that I can do it that way. When you're first learning, you need to follow the formula more. Let's see how long this is. It's only 7 inches, so I need to make it longer. It's not big enough for a necklace. I think I'll make another cluster. It's a little harder to make the knots against such a flat surface. Usually beads are rounder. I have to watch my fingers not to get stuck on that thing again. That one doesn't even have a hole in it. That looks okay. If anybody would watch this entire video, it's like it becomes like a bedtime video. Fall asleep with nodding. I like to do a combination of sort of choosing and sort of letting it get chosen, the beads that I use. This might be hard to email because there's so many bytes. All right, this is 6 and 3 is 9 inches. So this, I think what I'll do is make one big cluster, and that'll be the center, and then I'll go back in the opposite direction. Well, I mean, continue forward, but I'll think of it as the other side of the necklace. I like to make the middle kind of a big cluster rather than one bead hanging down, which will make it come into a point. The cluster to end all clusters. I want to make it noticeably bigger than the other clusters so that it'll be noticeably the center. I'm using big ones. Let's see how this looks so far. It's really not much bigger than these, so I need to make it bigger. You think you'll be able to do it from this?
Yeah, are you gonna post it from?
Oh, yeah, I mean, especially if you can watch the video, I guess.
Yeah.
I have to figure out how to post it. This is the beginning of my movie career. Whenever I see videos on YouTube where you never see the person's face, it's always like, you always wonder, like, who is this? But they'll never know. That, I don't know. It's sort of off-center. In a certain way, that's kind of interesting. In a certain way, it's kind of funny looking. What do you guys think?
A few more beads, maybe?
The thing is, what makes it off-center is, is the fact that these beads are bigger.
I like that.
You see what I mean? How
Yeah.
it's, you like the fact that it's off center?
Yeah. I like how it's all different all over.
All right. I'll trust your judgment, since it's easier than redoing it. Or I should say, partly because it's easier than redoing it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just repeat the same thing on the other side to make it symmetrical. Or as close as I can, you know, try to find sort of matching beads. Do you think this is still interesting?
I
To
do.
be-
I
you do?
like it. I really like those beads, though. I think they're really cool.
Oh, thanks. I forget which bead I picked for that. Maybe this. Yeah, I've never really used these beads. I've had them for a long time. Are you coming to see exactly how to do it?
I wanted to get it from the left-hand side.
Oh. I could move over. I don't know if I can get the hand out.
Because you need her to move a little more.
It's, I guess I can get some of this, yeah.
Do I have to move?
Maybe a little bit.
Oh, I got another cluster here.
Because when she drops it down with her right hand,
You can't see it.
you can't see it.
You have a lot of memory on your phone. That's great.
I do. Probably after
Yeah.
tonight it'll be used up. These are cool beads.
Mm-hmm.
I'm checking to see if the clusters are kind of alike-ish.
Mm-hmm. Looks good. Oops.
If anybody ever was going to buy this necklace, and I were to say like, oh, it's expensive because it took me so long to make. And then they'll say, I know exactly how long it took you to make. I saw you making it on YouTube.
It's hard. Yeah, you're right. It's hard.
Your
Same.
shot's too close.
What, should I do something differently?
No.
Mm. I want to get to the other side so I can show you how to end it off. What if this became my bestseller? I ended up making hundreds of them.
Everybody wants that bead.
Well, if I post it on Instagram, Maybe they will. All right, there it is. Let's see, what's next? This.
Can you see very much?
It's hard to see. I mean, it's just unless you get the camera right in there.
What's, is it too far or something?
Sometimes it's hard to see when you actually do the knotting
Should I
part.
do it in some different way?
No, I think I'm getting it right now.
Something tells me this movie is not going to be a bestseller.
No, I think it's really great.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, after watching this, I could make a necklace like this.
Aren't there other YouTube videos that have something like this?
I don't know.
I checked them out, Susan. I don't like the techniques. And there aren't very many.
The way they knot, or the way they explain it, or what?
A lot of the quality of YouTube videos aren't that good. You can't
That's
see people's hands. You can't
Mm-hmm.
see what they're doing.
It's funny. I could just picture now on my handouts to have like the link to my YouTube
Oh, yeah.
videos for each project.
That'd be cool.
But then nobody would need to take my classes anymore.
There's nothing like in-person instruction.
Yes. Don't forget that. I'm looking at this to copy it. Not that it would be exactly the same, but just sort of similar-ish. Oh, I got two.
My roommate's a miser, and he said, "Why don't you learn from a book?"
Mm.
And I said, "Because I want to learn from a person." He said, "Why don't you learn from YouTube?" I said, "Because I want to be an apprentice."
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something about being in a class. I know, because I take classes sometimes too, and I'm not really sure what it is.
It's motivation, camaraderie.
Yeah.
It's all that good stuff.
You can ask questions.
Yeah, you can ask questions. I don't know. It's also like you learn a little bit more in a way because, like right now, I'm trying to include a lot of different thoughts that I often have that I include when I'm teaching. But typically with a video, people just sort of get right to the point, and this is how you do it, and that's it. Small one. I keep forgetting exactly what that looked like. Was that the one? This is a common problem when working with cord. It gets caught on your other tools. As I was saying before, you have to, no matter how much you have done, you have to gather up the whole thing to put it through that little space. almost there. Let's see, so we have that cluster, that bead. This is next. Would be good. Would that be good? It's a little small. It's funny now, you get to hear my entire thought process when I'm making it as something.
Yeah, I learned how you get to the center of something. I never thought about doing it that way.
How do you get to the center of something?
Lay it out first and then worry about how long it's going to be.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure I do that sometimes, especially when I was more starting out.
Mm-hmm.
But I've developed this style where I like to kind of wing it in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I've developed kind of an unconscious awareness of what's what and what needs to be done next, or what beads need to be next,
Mm-hmm.
without being too scientific about it. But I guess you don't necessarily do that at the beginning. You have to develop confidence.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a knot, you're in trouble if it can't come out. Luckily, the key is if you have a knot, don't let it get tight. Pull it apart before it's too late. Okay, what's next? I'm almost there. So a little one, and then this. Sometimes, if I'm not sure if I'm going to have matching things, I will lay out both sides simultaneously,
Mm-hmm.
just to make sure that I don't end up not having the beads that I need when I get there. But I knew that was going to be a problem here. I forget which one I set aside for this. I think it was this. These beads get tangled really easily because of the shape. I don't like this one. This will be better. One more cluster, and then 2 more little beads. find the right beads to match the cluster. I just realized this is could bother someone's neck. I need one more tiny bead here.
You can wear it with a turtleneck.
Yeah. It's kind of weird, but whatever. Okay, I'm done with the spaces. I'm almost at the end. I just have two more beads two more small ones.